Welcome on to This Week at the NCPA. Lots of action happening at the National Centre of Performing Arts, and really our job is to give you the lowdown on what's happening on stage as well as off. Anuvab Pal joins me, and he is a very essential, integral part of Tata Lit Live, the country's most prestigious literature festival that's on 27th Friday, 28th Saturday, and 29th Sunday at the National Centre of Performing Arts. Also, a second venue at St. Paul's Institute in Bandra. How are you? All
Uh,
well?
Hi, Rishi. It's pleasure to be back. I haven't performed in Bombay for over 2 years, and I figure if the only place that will tolerate an English language comedian now is the NCPA. So if I have to make a comeback, then best to do it on the Tata stage, where the last bastion of English speakers are held up in a fortress.
Very well said, my friend. Very well said. Well, I'm quite intrigued that the Tata Literature Live 2023 Awards shall have you on stage before the ceremony kicks off. I'll tell you why I'm intrigued.
Mm.
It's because our mutual friend Kwasa Thakur Padamsi says,
Mm.
Anuvab Pal, do you pronounce it like the Britishers do or the Bengalis do?
The Bengalis. Unless I'm with Bengalis who think they're British, then I do fall. Which, like the Parsis, is a lot of people.
Lot of people. So he says that it's a brand new hilarious set created especially for the occasion. And what is the occasion? They're giving out the best first book of the year fiction, the best first book of the year non-fiction, book of the year fiction and non-fiction, business book of the year, publisher of the year. So, tongue-in-cheek question: are you going to be making fun of or taking pot shots at publishers and people who publish books, or literature festival folks?
Well, even bigger, Rishi. I think you will agree with this because you have such a large listening base that do it on social media, who listen to you in clips, compared to people who sort of maybe tune into the radio nowadays. I would like to make a strong argument against reading. You know what? What I want to go to NCP and tell them is reading has not led to anything useful in the world. So all these great authors, I think Salman Rushdie is going to be present by Zoom. Lots of great authors are coming. Science writers, and I think that unless they're able to do a 30-second reel where they are either dancing or singing or doing a food video, nobody's interested. This is my case, like if today Charles Dickens had to show up, and if he's not dancing to Drake, and if he's not sort of in some way, doing something to a trending reel, no one would read Great Expectations. There's no need for books. Like everything young people want is available between YouTube and Instagram. So, what, as an author, are you really bringing to the world? This is the case that I want to make at a literature festival. In fact, why is this whole festival not summed up in 22 seconds as a dance, as a TikTok dance? This, as a 47-year-old man, I know my own collapse because I'm seeing it around me. So I don't know what hope these people are holding out for literature. So it's a fervent plea for lots of established authors to stop writing. That is what I'm hoping to do.
But this is unbelievable because a social media pundit,
Yes,
or what they call a digital media influencer,
yes,
was emphasizing or actually pushing the point to me, saying, what's the point of me doing what I'm doing on the radio on a reel?
right,
So I said, but I don't know how to do anything else substantially well. I mean, as
correct,
well as I do.
correct.
But they said, no, what are your passions? I
Yeah,
said,
yeah,
reading a book.
yeah.
Maybe you could do something around books on reels. Or are you into
100%.
music? Maybe you could sing something. I said, but why should I sing? And why should I read a book on oh God, you're so right.
You see, Rishi, now
Yeah.
I've loved your musical choices over the years. You've seeped in as a familiar voice into so many Mumbaikars' heads. Now, tomorrow, for the Gen Z people, if you cannot sum up your life's work in 11 seconds, all the way from Jim Morrison to Snoop Dogg, if you can't sum it up in all the songs you love in a very short span, maybe through a series of noises like blah, 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 then nobody's interested. This is the same thing with books. Uh, they asked a bunch of young people in the UK recently, who Salman Rushdie was, and the young students misheard it as Salmon Rushdie. So they thought that it was some sort of a fisheries farm. So they were not,
Or
so
an exotic form of sushi.
it's an exotic form of sushi you can get in Bandra. Exactly. So, literature, who is it helping? We are probably the last generation. In the future, I don't think needing to read and write will be essential anymore. As long as you can talk into a video, that will be the main thing.
Okay. For all of you who are fans of Anuvab's, he's also doing other stuff at the festival. Elementary, My Dear Friend, is a session on Saturday the 28th. This is at 2 in the afternoon at the St. Paul's Institute in Bandra. And what it has is Anuvab along with Karan Rajan and Marcus Du Sotoy. My, oh my, I'm very, very impressed. Now, Karan, of course, is a doctor, an eminent doctor whose, work finds a lot of takers. He's also established himself as an author, much wanted across the world, speaking at TEDx conferences and literature festivals. And the great Marcus Du Sotoy, of course, talks about science, the proliferation of science. What, my friend, are you doing here?
I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. But I have a lifelong problem with kidney stones, so I'm hoping they'll be able to help me in some way. They'll be able to tell me what medicines I need to take. Medical writing has become very exciting.
Yeah,
Not just because of TV shows like Scrubs and all that, but a lot of those medical sitcoms have doctors writing. And medical
yeah.
books, Atul Gawande, they've become very exciting, much better than reading detective fiction, all the way from TV shows like House, which essentially there is some connection now between very good literature and medical writing because they almost treat an operation or a patient like a crime, almost like solving a murder mystery. And the way they write, like even Siddharth Mukherjee, when he wrote that book on cancer, it's almost like, cancer is like, some like great villain in a Marvel story, like so they write these guys that write medical books are incredibly bright. So I'm going to try and understand how they write well because imagine how much knowledge they have. They've studied medicine, like that's not bad enough. Then they became practicing medical professionals. Then they became authors. Like how much more pain do you want to give to yourself?
And some of them are still tackling the NHS.
Some of them, yeah, some of them are not even getting paid and working for the British Health Service. Just think, in a queue of patients that lasts longer than the British Empire. So just think now, and look at me. I talk for 10 minutes a day, and I pretend I've done a day's work. So I want to know what, like, it's not bad enough being medical professionals. What inspires to then make these people make it into cogent books and then have a reading public who love their books? I mean, this must really be a death wish. So I'm curious to know how, and also how they make it so fun. Like, how do they make medical books so fun? Even recently, there's so many other books I read. The leading Bombay heart surgeon. I know you are a great chronicler of Bombay, Rishi. You always have been. Tempton Udwadia, he had a book out
Yeah, Dr.
recently.
Udvadia, yeah, great
Yeah,
man.
fascinating book about surgeries. You would think these are morbid things to write about. Uh, I saw a Trevor Noah show before the show he did in Bombay, and he did 30
Uh,
minutes on.
Not the one in Bangalore, which never worked out.
Yeah, yeah, because then I'd be the only one in the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he'd be talking to me because the mic wouldn't work.
Yeah.
It'd be a conversation with just him and me. He did 35 minutes on COVID. So
Wow.
you think to yourself, medical writing, there is a kind of intrigue and real tension and popularity around it. It's almost become as popular as Korean drama. It's a thing now. And I just want to understand how they do it, and what kind of readers do they have? Are they absolute lunatics? Like, who reads this stuff? What are their fans like? Are they just fans of surgery? Who are these fans? Because they're not all doctors, fans of this sort of literature. Um, so I'm intrigued by that. So hence the title. There's a sort of mystery story meets medical writing, that kind of and it's a fun afternoon session in Bandra on the 28th. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Great. And it looks like Anuvab's going to be camping in Bandra because he has an 8 p.m. session that evening, which really isn't a session. It's Saturday the 28th. Now, just to give you a background to this, You Cheeky Devil was started off as a conventional literary quiz.
Yes.
Stuff like Wodehouse and Shakespeare and their first book, and
Correct.
when did they first use the term, and things like that. And then Kwasa, for some strange reason, decided he wanted to spice it up, and he said, even if somebody gives an incorrect answer, if he makes it sound funny or ridiculous, the quizmaster, which is yours truly, shall be able to give him bonus points.
Yes.
I have a sneaking suspicion you shall hold me to this when you
I
appear in the quiz.
In all the things I've done in my life, Rishi, this is the thing I'm most looking forward to. And I not really mean like work, but also personal stuff. Like, I don't have children, but if I had children, this would be far more exciting than seeing the birth of my own child, because this is going to be quizzing. And all I'm from Calcutta, so big quizzing culture I grew up
Oh,
around.
Derek O'Brien and
Indeed,
uh,
indeed. And I
no,
don't know
Siddharth
which is
Basu is from Delhi. So yeah, Neil
from
O'Brien and Derek O'Brien. Yeah.
That whole DI quizzing circuit, Neil O'Brien, Derek O'Brien, and the other brothers also, Barry O'Brien, also quizmaster. And I grew up around quizzing. I was never a quizzer, but I was always fascinated by how dysfunctional quizzers were. Meaning, not the quizmaster, who was always a very sophisticated sort of person who went on to interesting things in his life. Siddharth Basu did KBC, Derek O'Brien, less said the better about the party he's with. But I'm saying politics has its ups and downs. But quizzing, the participants were not people who should be let out of the house. I don't think they could tell you all the intricacies of the Portuguese flag,
Yeah.
but they haven't had a conversation with a human being in about 30 years.
Yeah.
Like basically, if you saw a photo of a series of serial killers and 6 of them are quizzers, you wouldn't know the difference. So I wanted for the first time in my life to sit with quizzers, not only just to explore my own ignorance, but also understand what kind of creature has these facts. Because they'll tell you the quizzers have insane facts. Although I think our quiz is a lot more friendly and it'll have journalists, etc. But I'm hoping there are some hardcore quizzers, who really get into it.
Oh, there will be in the audience, I assure
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And they will abuse us if we don't know things. That I'm really looking forward to the violence that will ensue. And also, Rishi, I don't know what kind of quizmaster you'll end up being, but I hope you are kind and gentle to us, because I'll tell you the quizzes I grew up watching with Derek O'Brien, etc. They would have things like, on this day in 19 some year, my favorite composer died. What's his name? I don't know your favorite composer, Baga. I don't know you. I've never spent any time with you. How will I answer this question? Or they'll have a thing. What are the colors on the Spanish flag? And what are the colors that were rejected? I'm not Spanish. How would I know these things? How? So I'm just going to take part in this to see how humiliated I can get in this sort of situation.
My last question has got to be about performing at the Tata Theatre itself. I mean, it's a fascinating auditorium to be in. I mean, the acoustics are great, needless to say. But the positioning is the stage thus and the audience looming thus. How do you feel about that?
Best in the world. The closest I've done is the BBC Radio Theatre, which
Ah,
seats 350 when I did that New Year's Eve BBC show. And I'd say Tata's better.
wow.
Something about, I think Philip Johnson was the architect, something about that room is perfect for stand up and one man shows. It's perfect because it's this Greek theater rake that's there. Also, but because the sound clarity is so good, it's so good. The only downside is once in a while there'll be a Parsi gentleman saying, "I can't hear anything. Talk louder. Change the topic. Are you wearing a tie?" So you can hear that nonsense also. But that's because the acoustics are so clear in that hall.
Well said. Well said. Guys, TataLitLive.in. That's the website. So go check out the schedule. Please attend these wonderful sessions. And of course, if you're looking at what's happening at the NCPA, Book My Show is your home, and ncpamumbai.com. Anuvab, see you soon at the festival. Cheers.
Always a pleasure. Be nice in the quiz.
Well, this week at the NCPA is all about India's most prestigious literature festival, which kicks off at the NCPA as well as the St. Paul's Institute. It's the 27th, Friday, 28th Saturday and 29th Sunday. Some of India and the world's biggest authors, book launches, performances, workshops, just a great place to hang out over the extended weekend. Very pleased to welcome one of the performers at Tata Lit Live this year. We're waiting to welcome him back, and that's Hal Cazalet. How are you, Hal?
I'm great. I'm here in Goa having a wonderful time. Can't wait to get to Bombay.
Now, Hal is a composer, a lyricist, an opera singer, and he's also a step great-grandson of, great-great-grandson, there are two greats in there, of the great PG Wodehouse. Is that true?
It actually, there's only one great, but it's great to be his great-grandson. Yes, a step great-grandson. So yes, and I've loved that role all my life.
You know, Wodehouse's work is very well known in India. The novels are very well loved. The characters are well loved. My personal favorite being Jeeves, should come as no surprise. But his Broadway career and his work in the musicals is not that well known. And I imagine that the idea of these two performances is to make sure that people know about that and also enjoy his work in Broadway and off Broadway.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating. It's a sort of forgotten time that his first career as the sort of founding father lyricist of the Broadway musical is really kickstarted him as a novelist. And as Plum said, writing his novels was like musical comedy without the music. And you can see that all these wonderful plays, I mean, incredible to think that he had 5 musicals running simultaneously on Broadway in 1917. That's a record not beaten to this day. And that all those wonderful characters from the stage stepped off the stage and into his books.
Wonderful. And of course, I imagine that the performance is going to have a lot of other elements. I believe you have an eminent pianist along with you. Are you going to be the only vocalist? And are there also going to be anecdotes from Wodehouse's life or his writing, Hal?
Yes, it's very much a sort of all-encompassing show where I tell stories and do a few impressions and really try and bring that era back to life. And so we're on Broadway in the teens and in the early 20s. I'm very, very privileged to say that I've got this wonderful pianist who's come with me called Simon Beck, and my very eminent director, Mr. Hugh Wooldridge, who will be joining us in Mumbai for the shows. So it's storytelling really, and I'm just so excited and thrilled to tell this chapter in Plum's life. Plum being PG Wodehouse, which is my middle name actually. So if you say Pelham quickly, have a go. What happens if you say Pelham quickly?
Hal Plum.
Yeah, there you go. So it's spreading to reveal this side of his writing, which all started with the lyrics and the characters that were on the stages back then. And then he became too successful with Jeeves and Bertie after that, and he didn't necessarily turn his back on Broadway, but he became just too successful as a novelist.
Which segues nicely into my next question. Are we going to see an impersonation of that blundering upper-class twit called Bertie Wooster?
I'm afraid you are. Which will be fun. And what's really sort of got me here is how we are so united. Our two cultures are so united, as the wonderful Vikram Doraiswamy, our Indian High Commissioner in London, sort of states, is that we are united by this incredible, the two things I think in his writing and who Plum was as a man, by romance and by humor. And it sort of breaks down all barriers, and it's something that brings our two cultures so close together. And I think Wodehouse does it sort of so well and so gently and so instinctively.
I believe the piece that you're going to be performing will also have works of other eminent playwrights. For example, Alan J. Lerner, who's a personal favorite. I remember him taking Shaw's Pygmalion and making My Fair Lady out of it. And, it remains one of my eternal favorites. And of course, Rodgers and Hammerstein. Are we going to see a bit of that?
We're going to see a bit of that, which, of course, Rodgers and Hammerstein very much influenced our main musical composer, Andrew Lloyd Webber. And we'll have a bit of the Jeeves musical. I don't know if you knew there was a Jeeves musical called By Jeeves, because Lloyd Webber and Alan Ayckbourn came together, two great writers. Alan Ayckbourn, being a supreme wordsmith, was called on board to write the book and lyrics for this Jeeves musical. And so they were very taken with the stories. I mean, like this country, Wodehouse is a complete institution in the UK. But what I love it is how he brings us together so naturally, and we all just bask in his sunshine, which is so lovely. It's just, I think the way I can describe the show is that I go back in time, but I just take you for a little wander for an hour or so, and then I do something very cruel, which only Wodehouse can do. I then release you back into the real world.
Well, I wonder if you've met Bruce Guthrie, who heads theatre. And, you know, at the NCPA, National Centre of Performing Arts here, he's a big Alan Ayckbourn fan. In fact, there was an Alan Ayckbourn play written by the great man, which just saw light of day at the NCPA and played out to packed houses. Also, I believe there's going to be a bit of Noel Coward and Dudley Moore.
Bit of Noel Coward and Dudley Moore. They're both sort of heroes of mine. They're so different, but they all have the sense of, and I think Wodehouse does it better than anyone, the sense of the absurd that we laugh at, and we're able to laugh at ourselves. Coward and Wodehouse, of course, knew each other through Gertrude Lawrence, so through the 20s. And I grew up watching sort of Beyond the Fringe and Dudley Moore and Arthur, and he's so comparable to sort of Johnny Lever and Kishore Kumar and those great stars. I just think it's lovely to have a Brit who's a great comic star that went to Hollywood and made a huge success of his life. And I think he's to be celebrated too. So hurrah for Dudley Moore.
Well, a little birdie tells me that as a child, Hal, you slept in a room beneath the Wodehouse archives. That's quite fascinating. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I did. The weight of history above my head. It was a tiny attic room, and it had, I think was interesting about it was when Plum died in 1975, my father brought back many artifacts and painstakingly catalogued this archive. And there it lived above my head, directly above my head. And I was fascinated, you see, to find all these songs by George Gershwin, by Jerome Kern, by, oh gosh, all the great writers, Cole Porter, who he worked with in 1934 and 1935. And it was as if Plum was just so offhand saying, right, I've sort of had my Broadway experience and I've got everyone going, and I've got the young Noel Coward, who's 19 years my junior, to carry the torch, and I'll just potter off and write some novels. So it was a discovery for me to go upstairs and find all these beautiful tunes. And I just felt that they needed to come to light again, and we need to revisit this time, this revolution on Broadway that featured Guy Bolton, the librettist, PG Wodehouse, the lyricist, and Jerome Kern, the great composer.
Well, that's not the only reason that he got into music, and his training is not limited to staying below the attic. Let me tell you that Hal is a very, very accomplished and trained musician. He trained at the Guildhall in London and the Juilliard in New York, which are two of the most eminent schools that the planet has. Well, I believe your sister herself is a singer and actress, and the two of your siblings often perform together. Is she not making the trudge down to India?
Oh, she's not. She's not. She's got an adorable 11-year-old daughter who she has to keep a close eye on, and she's moving house while we speak. So a little tricky. But I have to say we're thrilled to have Suchitra Pillai come and join us for one show as my guest, and Sharon Prabhakar, who we're very delighted to have too. And I've met them on Zoom, but I know all about them. And the last show we have Vivek Madden, the actor. So I mean, gosh, we're spoiled. It's the three-quarter way point of the show is my favorite bit, is when I bring on my special guest, and it's just a chance for me to shut up and the audience can listen to someone else.
But this is lovely. I mean, Suchi is a very dear friend, so Suchitra
Oh,
Pillai
great.
performing there, and Sharon Prabhakar is really musical theatre royalty. I think what both these ladies bring is that they've worked in the musical theatre. It's not just pure singing or pure theatre, but
Yes.
they've done large-scale musicals. And Sharon is part of Evita. She was Evita in Evita.
Yeah.
So I think that's massive. And Vivek Madan is one of the talented next gen of actors and singers in India. Hal Cazalet is on stage at the Experimental Theatre, 5 p.m. Saturday the 28th. And at 7:30 p.m. at the same venue, Experimental Theatre, Saturday the 28th. For those of you who are suburbanites and who don't want to make the trudge all the way to the NCPA Nariman Point, well, he's also performing in Bandra, 2 p.m. at St. Paul's Institute, Sunday the 29th, so 28th and 29th. You can go to tatalitlive.in and you can check out the listings and the schedule for those performances. And as always, do keep an eye out on Book My Show for all the other performances that are happening at NCPA and, of course, ncpamumbai.com. Now, about the performing venue itself. I believe that in 2020, you either visited the Experimental Theatre or, you saw visuals of it and you had expressed a desire to perform there. And here you are, performing at the Experimental. Talk about the National Centre of Performing Arts as well as the Experimental. I mean, it's really the pride of this country as a facility.
Yeah, and to answer your previous question, actually, I haven't yet met Bruce Guthrie, and I so hope he's in town. I love his appreciation for Alan Ayckbourn, so I really want to meet him. And yes, my first visit, I mean, I'm also associated, I'm very proud to be the ambassador of the Oscar Foundation, which is very much ingrained in Mumbai, which gets kids out of the community into education via football. Yeah. Which started off with 11 kids and it's now about 10,000 strong. So I'm going to fill the auditorium, I hope, with masses of kids from the Oscar Foundation, which will be a complete joy. But my first visit to the NCPA was with Quasar, who is co-organizing the festival. And I first met him with the wonderful Anil Darkar, who I know was hugely respected. I was a great visionary and a great light in literature and enjoyed good discussion and also good argument. So that's all very healthy. So really, I'm thrilled to be here. We had this initial conversation with Anil maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And just a tragedy that we lost him during COVID. But his legacy lives on, and that's what's so vital and so important. And I think I have huge admiration for this particular literature festival, and I adore Mumbai and I adore this country. So I'm thrilled to finally be coming to bring the show to the NCPA.
Wonderful. That's Hal Cazalet in action at the Tata Lit Live, the most prestigious literature festival in the country. I really appreciate your time and I can't wait to see you here in India. Bye-bye.
Me too. Bye-bye. Take care.
94.3 Radio 1.